Hi, everyone, and welcome to In Deep Geek Live. Welcome to the Game of Thrones pre-show, episode 4. We've just got 4 hours to go before the next episode of Game of Thrones, and I am delighted to welcome back my esteemed guest from last week who did so well. I just couldn't bear not to have him on again. So, Matt, do you want to say hi?
Robert, that's so sweet of you. Thank you. I'm very glad to be back. It was a great time last episode. Hang on. I'm going to pull a Robert here. So I'm just going to take off my glasses and talk for a few seconds, and then I'm going to put them back on dramatically. You may know me from my YouTube channel, youtube.com/JoeMagician. Put out a video last week about is the Night King really dead? Probably. But, it's a good one to watch. And you can also find me on the Maester Monthly podcast that I do with my fellow Song of Ice and Fire mods, and a Watchers on the Wall where I'm a feature writer, and a stream after the episode with... Hang on a second. Bookshelf Stud.
Awesome. As I said last time, you're a polymath, and you absolutely are. And perhaps ubiquitous is a better word. You're everywhere within this community. And it's, as I say, it is a delight to have you back on. So, guys, what we're going to do today is that, as always, if there's any super chats, we'll come to them as soon as we can. We'll try and pick up as many questions from the chat as we go. But I want to cover both last week, if there's any more questions from what happened last week. I know that it was quite a controversial episode in many ways, lots of questions coming out from that, but also look forward to this episode. What is it that we might expect? I know that there are some spoilers out there at the moment. I've given the mods free reign to be cutting them down if they ever appear in the chat, so don't worry about that. But let's just start, Matt, if you could. What is your take on what happened, having had a week to think about it? What is your take on what happened in the last episode?
The whole episode.
Yeah.
I actually didn't put out a review this week. Ran out of time on that. I just sort of used the one I did with Gray, the reaction stream that we did, to serve as like, this is what I thought. I really enjoyed the episode. I was on the edge of my seat for all of it. The action was amazing. I'm not one of those people that cares much about like military tactics or like, does this thing make sense in a realistic way? Those aren't things I'm usually looking forward from TV shows. Like, I'm not watching the Avengers and like complaining that like, oh no, they don't actually have earpieces in that can talk to each other when they're doing that. I'm like, yeah, whatever. That's fine to me. I think the main controversial thing was the death of the Night King and how people felt like maybe that undercut where they thought the series was going, that maybe they thought that would be like the last thing to happen, or that many, many, many characters would die in the battle. And they felt like the stakes that were set were not lived up to. And I tend to not feel that way. I did a breakdown earlier today on Twitter where I went through each battle in Game of Thrones and how many major characters, I would say major is like named characters that have been on like more than a couple episodes, how many of them have died. And the high score is Battle of the Wall with 3. And the Long Night battle had somewhere around 8 if you count the Night King, and I do because he's a major character. So like they actually did raise the stakes in a big way. They killed a lot of characters, including Theon, ended his huge arc. I mean, like, he's a major character. He's a face character for the show, so they really went there for it. And I've come around on the Arya killing the Night King thing. At first, I was like a little disappointed because I thought they had set up like he's really hard to kill. It's just this dagger thing. But then I think it was Kim Renfro wrote an article for Insider where she basically laid out everything, showing how it makes sense and how Arya got there and how they've been layering this for a long time. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, that does make sense. I was not paying attention well enough to that. So that's basically where I am.
I mean, I think where I'm at is that I think that we now have to clearly view the shows and the books as different things. The way that the showrunners have explained it is that it was their decision that Arya killed the Night King. It was their decision that there was a Night King to start with.
Right.
They invented that character. So they said it was like 3 years ago when the thing that I saw was recorded, so it might be up to, say, 4 years ago. That was when they decided that Arya would be the one to do it. And since then, you can see that they have seeded it. They gave both a micro and a macro level Arya undoubtedly is the sneakiest, most assassiny kind of person there. So if anyone is going to be killing the big baddie, it makes sense for her. And at a micro level, they did also seed it a lot. I did a couple of videos over the last week where I've kind of tried to draw that out. Where my problems or concerns with it was the fact that this left the army of the dead, the White Walkers, the Night King. They seemed to me still to be quite a generic baddie. They hadn't sort of plotted out all of their aims, objectives, and what was going on. That hadn't happened, and that was something that disappointed me. But overall, I have to say that episode, I spent almost all of that on the edge of my seat, just waiting to see what happens next. And I can't remember the last time I spent that long in front of a TV, just anxious about what was happening.
Oh, definitely. I was right there with you the whole time through it. I literally edge of my seat. I was fist pumping at things. Actually, the funniest part that happened was Arya in the library scene when like one of the whites touched the books. I just kind of whispered, "No, not the books too." Like not the library, anything but the library. Yeah, I thought I was super entertained. I thought it was really great as as a big television episode. Is it something George would have written? Probably not, but like that's not what I'm watching for. If I wanted to read that, I would go read the books, basically.
Yeah, and incidentally, I think the library scene, I know that a lot of people didn't like it. It was quite a change of kind of tone, really. But I think that was an attempt by the showrunners to set up the idea that Arya could move past the whites and kill whites without them noticing that she was there. I think that was a deliberate placement of that scene so that it made sense that she would suddenly appear in the Godswood and nobody would know that she was there. So that was us setting that up, in my view. We did have a couple of super chats I want to very quickly pick up on. Maura Lee, thank you so much. Incredibly generous super chat before we started, saying, just a show of love and support. Looking forward to episode 4. Thank you for these wonderful live streams before each of the episodes, as well as the episode breakdowns afterwards. Thank you, Maura. Very much appreciated. And Tina Sara saying, a lovely collaboration once again. Yeah, as I say, it was great having Matt on before, and delighted to have him on again. Let's pick up a little bit. So, Matt, I assume you saw the trailer for episode 4. Mm-hmm. What was it that so where do you think we're going to open with this to start with? Where's the sort of the starting point for this episode? Because it's another long one, but it's not a big battle. There's a lot more sort of political maneuverings and stuff like that. What would you say the starting point for this is?
I think the starting point for this is, I don't know if they're going to go right to King's Landing or if they're going to go right to back to the north. If they go to the north, I think it's going to be, they set up a lot in the first 2 episodes that there's going to be conflicts within their coalition afterwards, that Dany and Sansa are having conflicts, Jon and Dany are having conflicts, Tyrion is sort of maybe out of favor with Dany. A lot of people died, a lot of their forces are reduced, and they're going to have to deal with, probably the Northerners are going to say something along the lines of like, we need to rebuild what we're doing. We just lost everything. Winterfell's destroyed. Our soldiers are gone. We have no food. Like, we need to have like a survival plan. And I imagine Dany's going to go more along the lines of, I still got 2 dragons. We got some soldiers. Let's get down there and kill Cersei. And I imagine that'll be a lot of tension, because they did set that up with that discussion or that argument between Jon and Sansa, where he was like, we have Dany, we have her dragons, we need to use them. And she's like, how can we use them? We don't have the resources for an extended siege, that kind of thing. So those things really aren't going to go away. And especially the conflict between Jon and Dany, now that it appears that Rhaegal survived. I thought he died during the episode. Apparently not. He's dead. I mean, he's alive. So Dany will not be the only one with dragons after this. And as far as King's Landing, I'm imagining a lot of smirking as they get the letter, some sort of letter saying like what happened at the battle and what their forces are. And Cersei's going to be like, ha, 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 twiddles fingers. I got the Golden Company. I'm going to screw them up.
Yeah, I think that we have to say that Cersei got it right. That in a move that her father would have been proud of, taking a step back, letting those 2 forces fight each other from a purely sort of realpolitik way, that worked for her. She now has got the largest army and then she just has to face a very diminished Targaryen army coming south. But there are still 2 dragons. I think that the interesting thing I picked up on from the trailer was the fact that Jon and Dany seem, and trailers can be cut in odd ways, but they seem to be leaving at different times from Winterfell. You see the Targaryen fleet that Dany is presumably on, and you also see Jon and Davos riding out from Winterfell, apparently on their own. So that does seem to imply that they're not of completely one mind in what happens next. Rene S says Jon's storyline seems to be at its end with the potential end of the Night King threat. He must have an epic ending, though, right? What could it be now? So clearly Jon's got 2 strands to his storyline, I think. The first was this one about confronting the army of the dead, and the second is this kind of slow burn one about who he is and the fact that he is the rightful king, if you take the Targaryen succession as being the rightful one. So what do you think? Where's Jon heading for in this kind of storyline that he's got?
Well, to be honest, I was very wrong about where I thought his story was going. In my Killing of a Ranger Part 2 video I put out a couple weeks ago, I thought he was going to die in this episode or come very close, that he was going to take Theon's role. That's what I predicted. The synergy with, or the harkening back to Waymar's prologue fight, which is basically what Theon had. They just did that again. So I'm a little confused about what's going to happen to him now, but somebody pulled a really good quote where Stannis said something about Azor Ahai in the books, where he said even Azor Ahai did not defeat like the Long Night on his own. And people have been talking throughout the week about like maybe this character is not actually a warrior, even though he holds like Lightbringer or a special sword or something like that, that maybe he's more of a coalition builder or somebody that keeps people together in these sort of things, because that would make a lot of sense. It's not like Rhaegar was not a great warrior. The Starks, even though there have been great warriors in their past, a lot of their strength as a family has been holding together the North and building coalitions among people that hate each other. Along with the Targaryens are more fire and blood, but that's not really probably where he's going. Even at Castle Black, and with the wildlings, that's mostly been Jon's strength. When Ramsay said during the Battle of the Bastards, like, "You're the greatest warrior I ever heard," like, kind of, but like, it's more that he's been super successful at holding together factions that want to slit each other's throats all the time.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with Jon, as you say, is that although we had seemed to think that he was like this hero, or at least this was what they're presenting, this kind of hero's journey, the defeat of the Night King wasn't just Arya doing her thing. It was a team effort. Arya, it seems, wouldn't have done what she did if Melisandre hadn't just like heavily nudged her in that direction. Bran seems to have been pulling the strings behind the scenes. The Night King wouldn't have been on the ground in the first place, but for Dany on Drogon. The whole battle wouldn't have been set up, as it were, if it hadn't been for Jon, who'd been tirelessly trying to bring people into this. That the list goes on and on and on. They wouldn't have been prepared as they were if it hadn't been for Tormund and Beric and Ed and all the rest of it. So it was a huge team effort, this. It wasn't just Arya appearing out of the blue doing a thing. Linda Prasuta, thank you so much for the very generous super chat. Very interesting question, saying, magician's hats off to you both. Thank you. Revenge, betrayal, and power are pursued through the story. And like a Shakespearean play, the hero overcomes problems but doesn't have a positive outcome. Does Jon have a tragic flaw? So if we're talking about this as being Jon's kind of hero's journey, what's his flaw? What's stopping him being this perfect hero? What do you reckon?
Well, the first thing is somebody just tagged me in chat to remind people not to share spoilers. You're getting banned quite regularly if you do. Please don't do that. But as to what Jon's fatal flaw is, this is actually on my mind a lot because I was recently on Girls Gone Canon with Chloe and Eliana, and we were talking about Game of Thrones Jon 8, and that's the chapter with Maester Aemon's speech and J.R. Mormont talking to Jon after giving him Longclaw. And I think in that speech Aemon gave him about the death of duty and doing what's right and doing what your heart wants and how do you balance those two things, I imagine somewhere in there is Jon's flaw, in that he really wants to do what's honorable. He really wants to do what is quote unquote right, but he cannot forget his family, much in the same way that Ned did, where in the Black Cells, he was totally prepared to go on trial or anything like that until Varys mentioned that like Sansa was in danger. And then Ned instantly rolled over and said, my honor's not worth it. The rest of my family, the rest of these people are worth more than my life or my honor, basically. I think somewhere in there is Jon's fatal flaw, that he may not be ruthless enough, basically. Because ruthlessness is usually not a positive trait, but it can be at like high level politics, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think I agree. And we had a super chat. I just want to very quickly pick up on from Epundo3, who says, "I think Jon's flaw is his brooding." I think that's very true. I think that his flaw, in terms of if you're thinking about him coming to power, is the fact that he does not want power. He's actually too good for this world in many ways. He doesn't want to be king. He's never wanted to have any of the bits of power that are given to him. So I think that I don't know whether it counts as a flaw, but I think that is going to be the thing that stops him. He's incredibly brave, and he's going to go off and do probably stupid things he has done in the past in order to try and avert war and save the people he loves. And guys, if you're watching this live, yeah, there's zero tolerance on spoilers in the chat. So the moderators have got every right to go off and zap any comments that are even slightly spoilerish. And I've added a few extra temporary moderators. If you weren't expecting it and you didn't want it, that's fine. You don't need to do anything about it. But guys, if you suddenly see that you've been made a moderator, you have power to take down any comments. Let's go to Karis Morley, who says, bank holiday Monday tomorrow for us Brits. Yes, it is. I can finally tune in live to both this and the episode. It's a holiday, a public holiday tomorrow for us in the UK, so it's fantastic that we get a chance to stay up late and actually watch it live. Annie Jones says, any thoughts on Uncle Benjen? I will start by saying I suspect that we're not going to see him again on the show. I think that they kind of wrapped up for book readers Uncle Benjen and Cold Hands into one character, but I think that his story ended with him saving Jon and allowing Jon to get back down south of the wall. But Matt, do you think that there is any chance we might see him again?
On a more like what I think actually will happen level, no, I think he's gone. I think he went down in those swarm of whites, much like Cold Hands did in the books. I think that was the sort of what that was supposed to be. But somebody brought up really good idea in the comments on my Night King video of where I speculated how could he actually have survived this, and they pointed out that yes, Benjen is the only other character in the series right now, as far as we know, that has obsidian in his chest, and it was the shoving of the obsidian in the Night King's chest that made him what he is. So there's a really, really, really far-flung tiny percentage chance that that comes out in some way, but I suspect he is one and truly dead. I just thought that was an interesting link between the characters I had not really thought about.
Yeah, I agreed. I love the character of Benjen, by the way. I think that they did him, although they didn't take him exactly where I was expecting on the show, I think they did a good job with him, and I liked the character that they made him into. Scripts 2 Clips 4 Series and Flicks says, do you think the Second Sons will join Dany? The Second Sons are a sellsword company over in Essos, for those who don't know. Do you think the Iron Bank will have anything to do with who wins the Iron Throne? Will they betray Cersei? Dany does have dragons. So we pick up on one or both of them. So the Second Sons over in Essos, do you think they're going to join in? And what about the Iron Bank? They've been quite important so far. Have they got another role?
I don't think we're going to see the Second Sons or Dario again. They basically had their chance during this episode. They talked about so much how this was the Battle of Helm's Deep and the Battle of Pelennor Fields. if you wanted surprise Dario to come through with a massive army, a lot of people thought Melisandre's going to bring the fiery hand, the army side of the faith of R'hllor. And basically people went to Essos to go get help for them and came back empty-handed. So I suspect that's not going to happen. Although I did notice something interesting during the first episode, and I don't think this means anything, but it might be. It might be funny. The way they have
Is it elephants?
No, not elephants. Well, maybe we'll get elephants if we can get elephants. Oh my god! Harry Strickland talks quite a lot like both versions of Dario Naharis, the Ed Skrein version and the current one. So I don't know. Like, a lot of people have thought for a while that like Dario might be some kind of weird shape changing character, some kind of weirdness like that. That's kind of ridiculous. It is. You can see Robert's face. He just rolled his eyes and like, ah. But it may not be ridiculous that he knows Harry Strickland. That maybe the accent link is supposed to tell us that somehow he's been gonna come with something from Marine. I don't know. Probably not. I don't think so. I think they're really trying to narrow the plot at this point. I think that was a big part of the Battle of the Long Night, where they were just like, we really need to focus in on these like last few characters for these few episodes.
Yeah, I was pulling a face. I have an aversion to any this character is secretly that character things.
Well, we talked about Benjen. Isn't he Dario?
I think everyone's Dario, aren't they? Euron's Dario. Yeah. Either that or a faceless man. I'm not entirely sure. But so I'm with you on the Second Sons. I think that we're probably largely done with Essos. It wouldn't surprise me if we don't see Essos again, and if they're not really mentioned again. They might have a couple of mentions here or there, but it's not. This is now about Westeros. It's not about Essos. Essos is where Dany was and where she's come from. It's not about what's going on now. The Iron Bank, I think, is fascinating. In the books, they are clearly going to have a hugely important role. They have got a monetary interest in who sits on the Iron Throne. At the moment, they're bought into Cersei. And right now, you have to say that she's still looking like a 50-50 chance. Is that, yes, Dany's got a couple of dragons, but her army has been decimated. So you have to say that if they're backing Dany, then that's probably a reasonable bet. So I don't think we're going to see huge amounts of intervention from them coming in the rest. We've only got 3 episodes, don't forget, and there's a lot to happen in that.
Although
reintroducing, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, although if they come back, the situation that Dany and Jon find themselves in that the North has been destroyed, they're basically out of food, they have very, very little armies, all they have is dragons. Like, this is kind of a parallel to Stannis' situation when they went to go speak to them, and they basically said, like, all right, how much food do you have? What's your supply lines? And it would basically be the same answer. We have none. All we got is dragons and our cause. And they may look at Cersei and the fact that they already funded her and gave her, and she bought the Golden Company and paid off all their debts, and be like, I mean, dragons are impressive, but like, I don't know if Dany's going to win this. Or even if she does, it's a good enough bet to throw money at it.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, if I were looking at it from the outside, I think it is 50-50. They've got, we know that dragons are vulnerable. They set them up for a long time as being the nuclear weapons of this, but we now know they're vulnerable. The Night King took one down. Bronn nearly took one down. It's not that they're automatically going to win you the Iron Throne. So Cersei she's dug in defensively. She's had time to get herself settled into King's Landing and get all defenses right. She's had time to come up with a plan. Dany's going to arrive down with some boats and a couple of dozen soldiers and 2 dragons, as far as I can tell. That seems to be where she's at. So
yeah, it's kind of like that.
I don't know. As I say, it's 50-50. It really does depend on tactics going forward. Let's talk about Dornish Dan says Cleganebowl has had fans obsessing for so long they will inevitably be disappointed if it's shown. What are the chances the showrunners will just skip it since it does nothing to move the story and they're likely to piss off fans? Now, so I'll give my quick take on Cleganebowl. I'm sure Matt's got a view on this. This, for those who don't know, who aren't in the fandom, is the idea that Sandor Clegane, the Hound's story arc, clearly seems to take him back to face up against his brother, the Mountain. That's where they started off. Their backstory is that it was the Mountain shoved the Hound's face into a fire, which left him with all the scarring he's got, and they've had this grudge. So it seems very likely that they're going to come all the way round and the two of them have to face. That seems the obvious thing. We've dubbed it Cleganebowl. In my mind, that creates the idea of that this is a fight between two people who hate each other. I think that's slightly missing the point about what's going on personally. The Mountain is no longer Gregor Clegane. He's just this brought back science white that Qyburn has created. And so really what Sandor would be facing is not his brother. It is something completely different. So I think that we're not actually going to have this kind of big grudge match. And I wonder whether the big ending for them is actually Sandor having pity on his brother. And he may kill him, but that might be out of mercy rather than out of anger and revenge, because that part of him seems to have been slowly ebbing away. But what do you think? What's your take on Cleganebowl? Are we going to see it?
I don't think we're going to see it in the way people want, because we've already seen Cleganebowl. It happened in episode 1. The two brothers fought. It wasn't that awesome. It was just two huge guys swinging their swords at each other. Like, it's already happened, guys. We've already seen Cleganebowl, but I don't even think that it would live up to the battle between Brienne and Sandor. Like, that was probably the better version of Cleganebowl. Maybe that's what that was supposed to be. Yeah, I agree with you. I never really got the hype around it. It's just like one of those things where it's like they'll have a cool sword fight. All right, is it going to be as cool as the Mountain and Oberyn? Probably not, because that was an amazing fight. Like, I never really saw the appeal, and I think you're right on the money that if Sandor kills Gregor, it will almost certainly be out of mercy, like ending the pain and like maybe symbolically ending his own, like setting it all to rest at the same time for himself. Like the gravedigger plot that he had in the books that they kind of gave him in the show, but like kind of not really, where he's looking for more resolution in his life and like peace than going around swinging his sword, killing people.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think this is about, it's not about resolution for the Mountain. This is about resolution for the Hound. And the Hound, or Sandor, is not now about, I think, going to be at the ending point where he's wanting to be killing lots of people because of his anger about who he is. I think that he's now moved beyond that. But we'll see. There will be some sort of confrontation. Of that, I'm reasonably certain. The shape of it, though, I think is not going to be just one big fight.
Especially because we just saw them, like, the fans expected one big fight between Jon and the Night King, and they just sort of said, nah, and went the other way on it.
Yeah. And I think one other random thought on the last episode, I think this tells us a lot about how the showrunners want to tell the story, and they love the element of surprise. That much is very clear. They want to keep people on the back foot so they can't guess what's about to happen. So expect the last 3 episodes, there will be things that we are not expecting. Now, you might like that or you might not like that, but that seems to be where they're going. That was how they played it through the last couple of seasons, and definitely this is, as they were describing it, one of the reasons why they chose Arya was because they thought people wouldn't guess it. Marcella Edwards-Burden says, great reminders that the last war is still pending and not to take prophecy too literal. Yeah, there's 2 really important points here, I think. Thank you. I think in terms of the not to take prophecy too literal, it seems to be that they're saying through what happened last episode, that the whole prince that was promised, Azor Ahai, we could try and retrofit it to make it look like Arya, but really everything had been pointing towards Jon and Dany as being one of the heroes in that battle, and it was Arya who did it. So that seems to be that they're saying prophecy, don't trust it, which, to be fair, is something that we've been told again and again and again. The first bit, though, I would want to pick up on about the last war. I said this in my preview for the episode. I think Dany's language here is fascinating. She is calling it the last war, this war that's to come for the Iron Throne, because she wants to establish a Targaryen succession that lasts the ages. That's what she means. That's what she means by breaking the wheel. That's why she says it's the last war, because she doesn't want there to be any more civil wars or unrest after that. She wants the Targaryens to be in control. But what's your take on either of those, either on prophecy or it being the last war?
I think I'll go after the last war part first. This is something I've been thinking about a lot, and a lot of the reaction to this episode has been like, well, this was supposed to be like the biggest ending of the biggest conflict of all time, but it's literally the second long night. It's happened twice now. And the first time, all of Westeros was destroyed, basically. What Old Man says, there was snows 20 feet deep, just about everybody died. They rebuilt their society, fast forward a few thousand years, and they're right back where they were. So it's sort of this running idea that you see with a lot of like conquerors, where they think they're going to go through and wipe everything away and set up this new system that will never fall down. It will be perfect. And it works great until like Maegor the Cruel steps into that role, or Aegon the Unworthy. And there's no way it's going to be the last war, although I can understand that maybe Dany's saying that as like a rallying cry to get the Northerners who just survived the White Walkers to be like, get up for another battle. Like, we'll end this one. It'll be great. It will be like glory and all that stuff. So maybe that's what she's talking about.
Yeah, I can certainly imagine as a rallying cry to the North to say, we've just got one more thing and then that's it, no more death and suffering, because the North has been through a lot, as has most of Westeros. And I could certainly imagine that people might like this idea that they just have to do one more thing and then that's it. So they can live in peace and happiness forever.
Go on prophecy a little bit, because this is my jam.
Okay, you go for it.
Okay, so I think your point with prophecy is really good, that George and the show has told us over and over and over and over again, never trust prophecy. Like Maester Aemon's story is directly related to his tragedy and his sorrow over that he did try and do it, probably twice, and it led to his family burning down. Everybody, including the fans, always think they know the right way to interpret a prophecy. I mean, you can just look across YouTube and Reddit and see exactly that. Everybody has this character is Azor Ahai, they fit it in this way. But like, even what we think as the understanding of Azor Ahai does not have to be correct. That's the point of these things. George and the show has left them very intentionally vague so they can get to these kind of places, and that's kind of what happened. I mean, the story of what is it, Azor Ahai stabbing Nissa Nissa and getting a flaming sword and then using that to bring back the darkness, like, I don't even know what that means. Like, does that mean he like took one sword and literally killed everybody? And it's so symbolic and it's so hard to understand that, honestly, thinking that we know exactly what's going to happen ahead of time is kind of hard to do with the examples we have.
Yeah, so we must never trust prophecy in this world, either in the books or the show. One of the big themes for me, which always comes out, is that whereas something may be true, a vision or a prophecy may be true, what George R. R. Martin cares about is whether people believe it and what they do based on that belief. Actually, the truth of it is not as important to him. What matters to him is the fact that Melisandre believed absolutely all the things she believed, and she drove the action on the basis of that belief. That was what is important to him, not the truth of whether or not who she thought the prince was promised actually was the prince that was promised. But great question, Marcelo. That was fantastic. So Veronica Dogon says, here's to the moderators. And I absolutely agree with that. Moderators, you're doing a fantastic job today. Thank you so much. Robert, any speculation on what Qyburn meant by the Queen has other plans for the Targ girl? Do you think Dany could withstand wildfire? So on that second point, whether she could withstand wildfire, Daenerys seems to have, as Valyrians do, a tolerance to heat, an ability to withstand a lot of heat. But that does not mean that they're fireproof. So I think the short answer to would she be able to withstand wildfire is no. If she were covered in wildfire and set alight, then she would burn like any other human would burn. In terms of other plans for the Targa girl, then yeah, that I think this is just trash talk in a sense. This is Cersei is wanting to kill Daenerys, probably in a cruel and horrible way. She just wants everybody out of the way. So that's basically where we're at with that. But what do you? Assuming you agree on the fireproof Targaryens thing, what do you think in terms of Cersei's plans for Dany? Do you think she has got a cunning plan? She the bit we know about is the fact that she didn't get involved in the war in the north, but
Right.
she must therefore be expecting the army to come down south afterwards. Do you think she has a plan? And if so, what do you think that might be?
She always has plans. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Like her one with, I actually think this might be a little foreshadowy. The fact that she had plans for Olenna Tyrell and Jaime just sort of got in the way of those with his own stuff. She raged at him that she let Olenna take poison instead of all the atrocities she had ready for her. She did that awful thing that she did to Ilaria Sand and Nim. Was that one? Was that with the or Tyene? It was Tyene, right? Down in the dungeons.
I get everyone got them confused.
I think it was Tyene on this one. But anyway, the thing where they poisoned her and made her watch her die and decay in front of her. So on one level, it's probably something like that where she has a really like a really ironic, almost like devilish idea for how she's going to punish her for the insolence of her trying to steal the throne that Cersei stole. How amazing of her. She likes her scorpions. I imagine there'll be a lot of those. I don't know, maybe they'll rig them with wildfire or something crazy like that. Kim Renfro, in that article I referenced earlier about Arya, that she made the point that in this season, based on conversations that Dan and Dave have had with people, is basically what they're doing is they are taking the pieces on the board, more or less. The things already established in the world, the mechanics that are already there, the characters are already there, and using those to finish the story. Whereas in the books, George tends to make up new characters in order to make things go the right way. So we should expect to see a lot of what we've already seen from Cersei, which, like you said, was wildfire, scorpions, golden company, using gold in some way, some sort of trap, and the fact that the Lannisters are now famous for getting people together in a room and killing all of them, like the Red Wedding and the destruction of Baelor's Sept. So, I mean, that was actually a lot of the tension, right, for the Dragon Pit, is that everybody thought Cersei was about to kill everybody. You probably did too.
Well, it would have made sense. It was only the dragons that were stopping her, I suspect.
Right.
But yeah, so I think I agree. She has got plans. She will want to kill Daenerys as slowly and horribly as she possibly can, is basically what we're at. Jack Hurst, thank you so much, saying, Robert and Matt, love you both. Just wanted your opinion on the theory that the White Walkers didn't see Arya because the episode was so dark. I think I'll just leave that hanging. Great comment, Jack. I could see what was happening, but I know a lot of people had problems with that. Bruce Wayne, thank you. Love it when Batman's in the chat. Do you think the boat baby will come to pass? So boat baby is the idea that Dany is going to be pregnant with Jon's child. I think what I would say is that we're probably now, given travel times, we're a couple of months or so after that journey. So given the fact that she's then going to be having to turn around and come back down south again, presumably heading towards her only base in the south, which is Dragonstone, that'll be at least another couple of months. If Boat Baby is a thing, then it will start becoming obvious this episode, is what I'm saying. But what do you reckon? Do you think that Boat Baby is a thing?
I'm just laughing. I've never heard it called that before. Boat Baby. After the boat sex. I actually thought it was going to come up a lot in the last episode because the White Walkers were so obsessed for one of their few motivations we saw is that they wanted children, and they wanted particular children for some reason. And I thought that was going to come back, and it was going to be a whole part of it. But yeah, like the general idea going forwards is that so we probably just finished the Winds of Winter more or less, and now we're looking at a Dream of Spring. And so this means the show should probably start shifting its focus towards the young. So like little Sam, Cersei's baby, if it exists, Dany's baby, if it exists with Jon. Maybe that will come up in sort of like a Dany and Cersei trying to like come to terms with each other, or like have empathy, like we saw Dany trying to do with Sansa in that scene where she was in the I think that was the library, where she was trying to find common ground if they're actually both pregnant. And I assume Tyrion, yes, he has told Dany at this point that she's pregnant, or that he thinks she is. Maybe this will be some sort of thing to be like, we don't have to do this, think of both of our children, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and while we're talking about Cersei's baby, if we've got Dany who's a couple of months pregnant, then Cersei would have to be at least 4 months pregnant by this point. And by the time Dany's come back down south, then she would definitely be showing. So I think that any speculation about whether Cersei is pregnant, I suspect she probably isn't, will actually come to a head in this episode, because we will just know. Confessor Oak saying, hi Robert, any thoughts on Qyburn's outcome? My take on Qyburn is that he's looking after himself. He's not this Cersei loyalist that Cersei seems to think he is. He is using her in order to carry on his own research and things like that. So what Qyburn's outcome is going to be, I suspect, is that he's going to stick with Cersei for as long as he thinks she's going to win. The moment he thinks that she won't, then he's going to just get out of there. Now, I always come back to this, that because we're the ending is not going to be a Disney ending, some of the bad guys, as it were, are going to survive. Some of the good guys are going to die. It's not going to be all the good guys survive, all the bad guys die. My current favorite bad guy to survive is Qyburn, because I think he's clever enough to see when the writing's on the wall, and he knows the ways out of King's Landing, and I think that he would get out of there himself. But Matt, do you think Qyburn's, what is there a particular fate in store for him?
Probably. I just the mods asked us to remind people, don't put spoilers and leaks in the chat. You're going to get banned if you do it. If you want to keep talking on Robert's channel in the future, because why wouldn't you? Because it's a wonderful stream and the people here are lovely. Don't do this. But anyway, so back to Qyburn. I actually noticed during the first episode of the season where he was talking to Bronn and offering him the contract on Jaime and Tyrion's life, where he seemed very much like he was convincing himself more than Bronn it was a good idea to keep working for Cersei. And he looked horrified, basically, when he told Cersei that the wall had fallen, the White Walkers had broken through, and she said, good. And he was like, what the hell's wrong with you, basically? He's more opportunistic than I think a lot of people give him credit for. I think he's much more a Bronn character than like a Pycelle, I would say, where he doesn't have a dog in the fight particularly. He has the dog that is currently feeding him, I guess. So if Cersei starts losing, I imagine he'll turn on her. And there's actually something that a lot of people have been looking forwards to that might actually turn Qyburn on her. And that's actually that a lot of people expect that Euron may sack Oldtown during the upcoming episodes. The very heavily foreshadowed thing from the books that he's going to sail in and burn the Citadel and kill everybody in the city just because he can, because that's Euron. That's like the horrible kind of things he would do, and he still has his ships. So he's not technically a maester. He got like halfway through it, or he got thrown out for necromancy, but I imagine somewhere in him he still holds a lot of affection for that as an institution. And if Cersei lets Euron sack Oldtown and burn the Citadel and all the knowledge in there, I don't think he's going to be very happy about that.
No, agreed. And just on the spoiler warning, yes, guys, absolutely. If I had the technical ability to put a thing up on the screen, then I would definitely do that. But sadly, I'm not a very technical person, and I can't do that. But if you're tempted to put up spoilers, the mods will not just delete the comment, but also hide you, so nobody can see you again. So that's the power that they have. We had one other question as we're on Qyburn. Rene S says, wasn't Qyburn saved by Robb Stark? You think he may have some loyalty to him for that? Could that come back into play? I think my take on that one is that yes, he was, but I don't think that means he's got any loyalty whatsoever to Robb Stark or to Cersei or to anyone. He's got loyalty to himself. So I think that is where we're at. Haringaj perhaps says, what do you guys think the final scene of the series will be? So we're going right to the very end. What do you reckon the final scene is? We've been asked this a couple of times. I think on the last time we did this, what I will say is that if you look at what the showrunners talk about, the kinds of shows, TV shows that they like the endings of, the last scenes of, they reference to. They like the way that it happened in The Sopranos, and they liked the way that it happened in Breaking Bad. Now, I'm not going to spoil either of those shows for you, but if you've seen them, then you'll know that both of those ended in very idiosyncratic ways that are not just explaining everything that happened afterwards. It was just ending the moment that the story ends and leaving you to decide what happens afterwards. So that's all I would say. But Matt, have you got any extra wisdom on how you think this might, or what the final scene might be?
The final scene, it's a hard one because there's so many good things you can pull, because they like the Waymar and Theon connection. They like pulling early scenes and redoing them at the end as a bookend. So I think my favorite one may be the Ned Stark chopping off the Night's Watch deserter's head. That maybe somehow that will come back. Like maybe Jon stepping into that role, having to execute somebody that you think he probably shouldn't. Which that was the tension that in that scene. That was like, this guy was giving you correct information. He ran away, but you still have to do your duty, and that's something Jon struggles with. There's also the finding of the direwolf scene, maybe something like that with the dragons, or maybe we'll find Nymeria or something along those lines. Like, there's a lot of stuff from early in the books that would be that you could translate forward and use young characters, or have the characters that are now aged up to step into the roles of the previous characters that are now dead. That would work pretty well. My personal favorite would, like I said, would obviously be the Ned cutting off the Night's Watch deserter. George even brought that up in the Cregan Stark parts of Fire and Blood, where he very much likes the idea of a Stark Lord walking into King's Landing and executing people to bring peace and end the war.
Yeah. Well, I think that's given you a range of possible options for the final scene there. A couple of people, by the way, asking what counts as a spoiler. As far as I'm concerned, we can talk about anything that has aired officially up to this point. So we can talk about up to episode 3 completely. We can talk about the trailer, but there have been some leaks about episode 4, which, if you're watching live, that has not aired yet. So we're not doing any spoilers about episode 4 here. Question from Ressa68 saying, was Arya killing the Night King the third big twist? If not, what do you think it will be? Thanks and love all your videos. Thank you very much. So the third big twist, for those who don't know, is that when, I think it was the showrunners who were saying that when they were plotting this out with George R.R. Martin, there were 3, I think they described them as something like WTF moments. The first was Shireen's death. The second was Hodor, hold the door, and there was one more that at that time they hadn't had. So the question is, what is the third one of them? Now, what I would say is that they haven't confirmed that it possibly was the Arya thing, but this seems to be not just an important moment in the plot so much as a moment that makes you just go, wow, I wasn't seeing that coming. That was an unexpected thing, which for me is going to be some sort of betrayal. Somewhere along the line, And I think that is going to come in the second half of the season. And I think this is where we're at now. We've had the seeds of it sown all the way through for a couple of seasons now, with Varys, with Tyrion, and various other people. The idea of people shifting allegiance. For me, I think that is probably the third of these big moments. But what do you think, Matt? Is there something else, or was Arya that moment?
I don't think Arya can be that moment because there's no Night King in the book. So how can she kill a character? That's a big twist that George has not introduced, unless he's planning to, in which case maybe it is. But like, I would have a hard time believing that he's going to do a last 2 books. Night King shows up and just like that scene. I don't think he's going to do that scene in particular. I mean, well, because I wrote a theory saying I don't think that's going to happen. That's the point.
If you wrote it, then it must be true.
I wrote, yeah. Apparently, actually, I get a lot of comments about that in my YouTube channel. Like people are like, "If only you wrote Game of Thrones." I'm like, "You don't want me writing Game of Thrones." I come up with wacky ideas. I am bad at writing actual like prose and stuff like that. But anyway, I imagine the third WTF moment. I think it will, like you're saying, be some kind of a betrayal, like maybe Tyrion turning Dany and Jon against each other, because Peter Dinklage has said that he's pretty jealous of Jon's relationship with Dany, and there's been a lot of self-destructiveness in Tyrion, and he especially got slapped around in the last episode by Dany. So maybe that blooms off the rose, so to speak, for him. Maybe he'll be a little bit more self-destructive in that way. Another big twist idea that has been lingering for a long time is the Valancourt and how that relates to Cersei. And it's been shown for a while she's going to be killed, and they've introduced a lot of ambiguity into how that will happen, or even if it will happen. So like what we were talking about earlier, where prophecy isn't what you think, then maybe something like that will happen with her, where she'll die in a very unexpected way, or maybe she just won't at all. But I suspect it'll be focused mostly around Jon, that somehow, some way, the people around him are going to force him to make like a really impossible choice. Like I said earlier, with Aemon's speech to him, that speech in particular seems to be a primary part of his arc as a character in the books and the show. And what does he do when, like, if power is shoved at him and his family shoved at him in the other? Which way will he go? Maybe it'll just be surprising.
Yeah, I think that's a fair guess. So the Jon and Dany relationship is going to be central to what's going on in the second half of the season. But it's clear that they do love each other, but at the same time, they have got slightly conflicting views on what should happen next, basically. So let's quickly go back. Thank you so much, by the way, guys. Lots of great questions. We're trying to get through them as quickly as we can. Crazy Leg saying Cersei is the Mad King. King's Landing will go down in wildfire. Yes, they've definitely set this up as being, sorry, the Mad Queen. King's Landing will go down in wildfire. They've certainly set this up as that this is the kind of thing that she might do. It would not surprise me at all if she tries to do that. And now that Jaime has survived, will he have to reprise his role as being the Kingslayer, Queenslayer, and do the same kind of thing again? And Lycan645 says Bronn used as biological warfare, ? And Golden Company jumping ship. Personally, I think that the Golden Company, we have to view them now as just a sellsword company. I don't think that we can think about their history, that there's a huge history for them in the books, but I don't think that we can take that as being important in the show, because they haven't played it up, and the whole Blackfire thing isn't really a thing on the show. So I don't think the Golden Company will jump ship. Bronn, incidentally, I think that he will probably, this is my gut instinct, he will not go through with the attempt to kill Jaime and Tyrion. I think that the fact that Tyrion has said he would offer him double is probably quite likely. But here's a good question for you from Helen Sanchez about Little Sam. Now, for those who don't know Little Sam is Sam and Gilly's child. It's actually not Sam's child. This was the Craster's child, who has been hanging around with them now for quite a few seasons. Why is little Sam still around if he didn't play a part in the demise of the White Walkers? What could possibly be his purpose going forward? My take is that they've left that out completely now, and he's just there as a character who doesn't have a particular purpose. But what do you think, Matt? Is there something else there?
There's some tinfoil ideas about like maybe he's part White Walker or something like that, and the Night King will manifest in his body because he was supposed to be one all along. I mean, those are cool ideas. I think I maybe put one of those in my video or alluded to it as a possibility, but like I think they just kind of they just need some children as the series ends so that there's some sort of like hopefulness for the future where they need to establish like we've destroyed this world, we need to rebuild it for the next generation, and little Sam will probably be a big part of like those kind of conversations, at least for Sam and Gilly and probably Jon.
Yeah, I agree. I think so. If we view, as we have done all the way through, if we view Sam as being the equivalent of Samwise Gamgee, the last scene of The Lord of the Rings, both books and show, is of him and his family as a show of hope for the future. And I think that it would make sense that that is where they're going to end, is to show that, yes, there's a good thing that has survived all of this. Now, Chlebina, I mispronounced your name. Apologies, I'm sure. Killing the Night King didn't complete Arya's arc. She still has her list and now is with Gendry. Will she be a lady or assassin or something else? Because neither seem quite right. Yeah, I'd love your take on this one, Matt. I think that I came into this season thinking that she was going down this arc of her being this cold, heartless assassin that was just smiling as she killed people, and that was where she was at. But this season, they've really played up being human again, which has left me slightly in two minds as to where her arc is going to end. I completely agree she's going to go down south. She's going to try and finish off her kill list. But what do you think her end game is? Once the kill list is done, is she then going to go off and be an assassin? Is she going to go off and settle down and marry and be a lady? What do you think?
It's hard to say, because before the scene with Gendry, where they hooked up before the battle, and before this episode where you actually saw fear on her face again, and she seemed very much human in a way Bran is not for quite some time, that they were kind of parallels for a while, and now they've diverged again. Bran is now the weird guy, and Arya is sort of coming back to being a person. She may have affections for Gendry that will come out. Some people have speculated in the past that Gendry may be legitimized as the Lord of Storm's End, and maybe that will be their future, Arya and Gendry, but it could also be that Sansa and Gendry may marry in order to solidify that relationship, and that between the North and the Stormland. So maybe it'd be sort of a tragedy thing. I don't know, because she's so similar to Lyanna in the books and in the show, really, except for the whole killing thing. Lyanna really never got that far. But there was a point in Lyanna's life where she turned from being a tomboy to being more of a romantic, sort of interested in the silly things she used to hate kind of person. So maybe that's in the future for Arya too. Maybe we're starting to see that. Like, she beat the crap out of a bunch of squires. She was the Knight of the Laughing Tree, and then she cried at Rhaegar's song. So clearly there's two aspects to Arya that are going to be expressed as we go forward.
Yeah, I think that's a really good analogy. Arya is often compared to Lyanna in the books and a little bit on the show. So the comparison there is quite important. I think looking at Sansa, I find this quite fascinating, because Sansa clearly starts off wanting to not be in the North, wanting to go down south and be a lady. And at the end of it, she seems to now be re-embracing her northernness, her starkishness. Arya clearly didn't want to be a lady. The question is whether or not she's going to come full circle and actually then decide that she did want to be a lady at the end of it. I hope not. I hope that she embraces all of the parts of her character, being both this assassin that she's been trained to become, and also her starkishness. So it makes sense for me if she's still tied in with the North. I think the Gendry thing, it could go one of two ways. it could either be that they're going for the happy Hollywood ending on this one, or it could be that they're building up for tragedy. But it's not just going to be just a nothing. I think that's for sure, as far as I'm concerned.
My personal hope is that she goes the Brienne route and just sort of becomes that kind of a character. That seems to be the kind of person she would be a fan of. And also, Jojo Lee Dane wanted us to let you know, Robert, that there's 4.1 thousand people watching right now.
Wow. Thank you. Guys, I appreciate it. There's a lot of people. So, Matt, I've decided they're all your fans. So this will be why they're there. But thank you. The questions have been great, which is fantastic. Lycan645 says, Lord Glover, your punishment is to be known henceforth as Darling. It's a joke for Blackadder fans there. Scripts to clips for series and flicks saying, Gem Magician, you keep saying no food. Did the dead steal all the food stores in Westeros? Where did it go? No offense intended. So there you go. So what do you mean by no food?
So it was brought up in the first 2 episodes that they do not have the stores to support the 2 armies, that they were running through them quickly, and that was part of the problem with Dany bringing her 2 armies in order to support Winterfell. Sansa brought up the point that, like, we cannot keep these people here indefinitely. We're going to run out of what little we have. And they brought that up a lot in these scenes where characters, even the High Lords, were going down to grab these like really crappy looking bowls of soup. So Winterfell is running low on what they have. And winter has fallen across the north. They're not harvesting anything. They basically don't probably have any money anymore. So I don't even know who would sell them it with the Tyrells dead. So if there's going to be a campaign on the south, a problem they're going to have to solve is supply lines and how do they feed the army and the dragons? Because like Dany said, they eat like, what was it, like 24 animals a day? That's a lot of animals, especially in a time of hardship.
Yeah, well, the one, it's slightly dark way of looking at it, I guess, but the one advantage of having a massive battle in the north, killing loads of people, is that suddenly those food supplies will last an awful lot longer. Judging just from the pictures that we saw of episode 4 in the trailer, there doesn't seem to be anywhere near as many people as they had to start with. So they've reduced their numbers significantly. I think you're right that food is something that they've mentioned quite a few times in the north. I think this might well be something that Sansa could say to Dany, that we simply cannot keep on feeding your 2 dragons and keeping our people alive. You need to head south now. That's an entirely reasonable thing for her to be saying. I can't remember what it was in one of the first couple of episodes when we found out what a dragon was eating in a day when they weren't very hungry, but it was a lot. So multiply that by 2 and then every day, then that's a huge amount of resources coming out from the north all the time. Kay says, what about the many other houses, both small and large, in the show? A big part of Aegon's first conquest was getting the support of houses. Yeah, so what they've been largely killing off the houses in this season, it has to be said, and the last season. So what we're now down to is a case of people, characters, really, rather than houses in terms of showing support for people. The way that the original conquest of the Targaryen original invasion seemed to happen was they came in, they had a show of force, showed that the dragons could do things with like the burning of Harrenhal and things like that. That made other people then bend the knee, and that was what won it for them. So that if Dany's going to go down that route again, then that seems to be what will have to happen. She will have to use the dragons as a show of force, and then after that, start trying to get people on board. There are other houses out there. There are some huge houses that we've hardly heard anything about at all in the books, like House Hightower, House Velaryon, some massive houses. But I don't think that they're going to be playing a huge role here. Now this is going to be the drama between Cersei and Jon and Dany and Tyrion and characters like that, rather than the houses. Linda Prasuta, thank you. Another very generous super chat saying, as in the Scouring of the Shire, where the hobbits end up restoring the Shire and Frodo shows mercy, how can this really apply if Dany is still a cog in the wheel? Will Jon show mercy? So I know we talked about this before, Matt. You and I are both Tolkien heads, and will. I know I will, and I think you will be doing a bit more Lord of the Rings content after this season. But what there's clearly a link here between the last bit of this story and the scouring of the Shire. George R. R. Martin has said so. What do you think that this means in terms of here? Is Dany going to be shown mercy? What's going on?
Sure. So, just a quick reminder, everyone, what the Scouring of the Shire is. In the Lord of the Rings, after Sauron's destroyed and the Great Victory is won, and people go off beyond the sea to the Undying Lands, I think that's the name of them. Frodo and Sam go back to the Shire, and they find out Saruman has lived and has essentially turned the Shire into a bunch of factories and prisons and crap like that. And there's this weird little chapter where they have to go through and free the rest of the hobbits and restore the Shire to the way it was. And in terms of how this is going to work for Game of Thrones, it's hard to say because like there's no obvious good place like the Shire in Westeros what we're talking about. Even if you take Cersei out of King's Landing is still an awful, awful place. But I think the main point of it is that there's going to be some sort of try to move back towards something. Dany seems to think that will be moving back towards a Targaryen dynasty. I imagine Jon has ideas of his own, and Sansa and Tyrion, which will probably be a lot of the conflict. That they have different ideas about how you unscour the Shire, so to speak. But yeah, there's not a super perfect one, like a super perfect comparison. There's no Saruman running around. There's no Shire for these characters.
I think the Saruman equivalent is Cersei. Personally, I think that's what they're trying to say. It's like the secondary baddie. We had the Night King, who is the Sauron kind of figure, and then Cersei is the secondary figure that they still have to get rid of in order to get some resolution to the story. So I think that's what it is, and it's just how do our broken heroes now deal with this final threat? Which leads into Sylvia Sebrechts saying, wouldn't Cersei rather lure Dany into using her dragons to set King's Landing afire as a way of negative propaganda? Cersei is definitely about the propaganda, is definitely about getting people's sort of fears up about this foreign invader who might attempt to sort of roast the entire city. But what do you think? Do you think she's actually that manipulative and evil that she would try and get Dany to sort of attack the innocents of King's Landing?
It's certainly not out of her wheelhouse, so to say. She does not care about anybody but herself at this point. She's written off Jaime. It's unclear. She may be using that fake baby as just like a way to humanize herself to people. Meanwhile, she's being an awful person. From the early trailers, we've seen shots that haven't come up yet of Cersei standing alone in what looks like the throne room in like her bedclothes with a glass of wine, symbolizing that she will be alone at the end of this. So yeah, I mean, it's totally possible. In the wildfire is not just under the Sept of Baelor, it's under the entire city, apparently. Although I'm not sure if they established that in the show. They definitely did in the books. I imagine it probably still is. Jaime referenced it in the Harrenhal bath scene. It would be tough though, because like if Cersei's actually going like full Mad Queen, if she sets King's Landing on fire in order to win a political victory, who's she actually the queen of anymore?
Yeah, the Queen of Ashes. So I think that's where that's heading. And I think I agree. She's not beyond it. And I think that they did set up the idea that Dragonfire that wildfire is all over the place under King's Landing with Tyrion when Tyrion was investigating it back in season 2 or whatever it was. Donish Dan saying, was Jon really yelling go, go, go to Arya while eyeball to eyeball with an undead dragon? If so, that behavior was something a promised prince would do per prophecy. Yeah, for those who haven't seen this was it was a take or a guess on what was actually happening. If you remember right near the end of last episode, Jon, when he's pinned down by Dragonfire, he just stands up and just yells at undead Viserion, and then we cut to the scene, the final scene with Bran and the Night King and Arya, and I've watched it again. I can't quite make it out myself, but some people say that it looks like he's shouting "Go, go, go," as if to Arya rushing past and he's distracting the dragon. That's what he's doing. And if that's the case, and I do like it as an idea, I like it seems to work for me. As for what Jon would do, then yes, that is a very sacrificial thing that that is quite a Jon kind of thing to do. I don't think that necessarily means that it's a prince that was promised thing to do. The prince that was promised. The fascinating thing about both that and Azor Ahai is the fact we haven't got huge amounts of details about what this prophecy actually means, what they were actually supposed to do. So other than be the leader and help save humanity. So yes, it could be, but the implication, what everybody seems to think, was that this would be the person who would actually do the killing. The Reagan Cajun says, or the Raging Cajun says, do you, if Dany is pregnant, Ghost, do you think if Dany is pregnant, Ghost could be the first one who notices? If we get a scene with him and Dany, maybe he walks up and sniffs her belly or something. Yeah, that's entirely possible. I think that's right. I think that we will find out about the pregnancies in this episode, and that will be quite a good way to show it without actually having anybody say anything. Just coming back to Qyburn, actually, Josh B says, what about Jaime's debt to Qyburn? Matt, perhaps you want to come in on this. So Jaime, if you remember that Qyburn was the one who actually he cauterized the wound on Jaime's hand and saved him way back in season 3 or whatever we were at. Do you think Jaime thinks that he's got a debt to Qyburn?
I'm not sure if it's a debt. We saw them during the last season interacting, where Jaime does not have great feelings towards him anymore because he's filling in like the Varys role and he's telling Cersei what he's doing. Doesn't feel that great about him, I would suspect. They haven't really had like too many like they had that one sequence where they got to know each other a lot, and then afterwards, like the life has sort of pushed them apart. We were talking about Qyburn earlier in terms of what he may do. Well, he is the master of whispers now. He does know all the the passages. So if there's some way that Jaime needs to go see Cersei for some kind of like endgame conversation to convince her to do something, or maybe if Qyburn thinks she's gone too far, maybe he'll enable the Kingslayer to become a Queenslayer kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and as we're talking about Queenslayers, do you think Scripts 2 Clips 4 Series and Flicks says, do you think Tyrion's threat to Cersei will come true? Tyrion effectively threatened to kill Cersei, and she clearly thinks that she takes this seriously. What do you think, Matt? Do you think that Tyrion? I think that he's behind Jaime and probably Arya in the pecking order of people most likely to kill Cersei. Do you think Tyrion's got a chance?
I think so, if only because he had that conversation with Bran where we don't know what was said. And as we saw in the last episode, Bran is clearly thinking on things on another level. Now, Tyrion asked him about like his life to tell him where he's been, but if he sort of gave some hints to where things are going in the future, maybe they established some kind of relationship, or he gave him something, like maybe, I don't know, maybe that could be something. We've seen Bran do that a lot, where he is essentially moving around all these characters like pieces on the board. You have to take any person that's basically interacted with Bran in any way and question where they're being pushed and why. And Tyrion is definitely one of them with that mysterious conversation.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Bran is trying to push things in certain directions, and we saw that with what was happening with the setting up Arya and all the rest of it for last episode. Tyrion, there was the conversation. The thing which fascinates me, which gives a hint, I think, to where Bran might be going in the second half of the season, is he clearly got Sam to tell Jon about his parentage when Sam was really annoyed with Dany. So Sam, in delivering the news to Jon, was not just saying, okay, you might want to take a seat, here's some really important information for you. He was straight away trying to push him to put forward his claim because he thought that Jon would be a better monarch than Dany. So that is a hint as to something that Bran is trying to head towards. Which, and I'm going to mispronounce this again, but Chlebina says maybe Bran becomes Hand, like pre-war Bloodraven. Personally, I suspect not. I think that this is Bran is manipulating events, but I don't think that he cares about the Seven Kingdoms and who rules per se. I personally think he's just about trying to prevent the threats to the Weirwood network and to Westeros as a whole. I think that that's where he's coming, and I think don't well, you can't quote me on it, but I think that this is heading towards having defeated the army of ice. How do you get rid of the dragons as well? That might well be trying to restore that balance. G. Joe says Dan and Dave promised a last twist in season 8. What will happen in your opinion? Thank you for the super chat. I think we answered that one slightly earlier in the live stream, so I won't go over that one again, but I think we are agreed that this is something to do with Dany, something probably to do with Dany and Jon, and possibly a betrayal as well. So I think that is the last kind of thing that we're looking at here. Dracarys Noir says, might Sam be traveling with Jon and Davos? This is the shot from the trailer where Jon and Davos seem to be riding out from Winterfell, separate to whatever's going on with Dany. And it looks like Gilly was there in the background waving them off, which makes sense if Sam is traveling with them. So yeah, it's possible. It really depends on what mission they're doing. What are they doing? Where are they going? I have a sneaky feeling that Jon will be wanting to somehow avert a fight to try and stop there just being more war. And having Davos with him makes sense. Sam, yeah, perhaps also. But perhaps you could pick up on this one from Leathery Wings, Matt, saying, what will Tyrion's role be in the upcoming battle? Will he demonstrate his cleverness again?
Wait, there's another battle? There's another battle? Well, he's shown, and he's shown in previous battles that he's more of the tactical person. In the last episode, he complained that he was not being allowed to see something that nobody else could, that he should be allowed to go up on the battlements, and Sansa said, like, no, you'll straight up die. You won't be able to help. Everyone's going to die up there. So I imagine that Tyrion's going to assert himself a little bit more in the upcoming episodes to make sure he's in situations to use his great intellect that he thinks he has in order to maybe see Cersei's betrayal coming before it does, as he has a pretty good barometer for when she's trying to screw him.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but I think also it's worth thinking from Dany's perspective. I don't think she is going to trust Tyrion with offering her advice on how to get rid of Cersei. So Tyrion is going to be slightly cut out of that loop. And I think that is going to be a source of tension again, because she was clearly angry with him for believing, whether or not you think there's something else going on there. Dany is angry with Tyrion for believing Cersei. And she thinks that he's biased towards his family, and therefore she will not want him to be setting out the game plan for how to take on Cersei, is my general take on that one. Lucky says, hey, wanted to say, Robert, you're my favorite Game of Thrones channel. Thank you so much. And tell Joe that his Killing of a Ranger video is absolutely brilliant. It is. If you've not checked it out, go and have a look at Joe Magician. I'm sure one of the moderators will put a link in the chat, and I'll make sure there's a link down in the description after this. Also shout out to your mods working hard in the chat. Yes, moderators, thank you. Said it already. You're doing a fantastic job today. I can see the amount of work you're having to do. Do you think Dario returns? Personally, I think not. I think that his time is gone. Maybe they want to give him a cameo or something, but I certainly don't think he's going to have a major role in this, as we kind of picked up on earlier in the stream. I don't think that there's a plot imperative for him to return. L4 thank you so much for the super chats. That's very kind. MWM48 says, will Jack and Hagar come for Arya now? What do you reckon, Matt? Is Jaqen coming back?
Sure. This is something that I think Maester Mary was talking about, and yeah, it made a good point. Like, is the Faceless Men, did they just exist in the story to give Arya this sort of assassiny, like Hogwarts experience, and then they're over with? Probably not, right? They're a part of the Iron Bank, which are now inexplicably, well, are now that's the wrong word. They're integrated with the story now through the Golden Company and Cersei. So if the Bravos is still involved, then I guess the Faceless Men still could. That'd actually be kind of like a fun twist if we see him somewhere during this. It wouldn't be a hard thing to do, especially. I'm just sort of tinfoiling at the moment. Like maybe Cersei hires the Faceless Men to go after like Jon or Dany or something like that, and Arya catches them. That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, in wider book terms, I think that the Faceless Men do have an agenda in that they, when they say all men must die, this isn't just a cool catchphrase. This is the main tenet of their belief, that all men must die, and therefore everything that's been going on with the Army of the Dead, with Qyburn creating zombie whites and the Red Priests bringing people back, this is going completely against, this is heresy, this is going against their fundamental belief that all men must die. So I think that, pardon me, I think they've got a huge amount of plot to go in the books. On the show, I think largely they have used them as just people to train up Arya to be this really, really cool fighter. Elizabeth E213 says Bran's reunion reactions, I think, means something. Not only Sansa and Arya, but definitely the difference between looks at Jon and look at Dany. Thank you. Yeah, so what I picked out with Bran's reunion reactions, and I put this in my latest video about what Bran was doing all of that time, was that I noticed that his response to Arya was noticeably warmer than to anyone else. Only really noticed this on watching back, but actually he does the closest thing he has for ages to a smile. You can actually see that the corner of his mouth like go up, and he says, "You came home," as if like this is good that you came home, and the rest it was just like accepting that they're there. So I think that for me that was the one reunion that really stood out. That he clearly was happy that she was back.
Mm-hmm.
But as we're talking about, also no, go on.
I was going to say, there's a funny, complicating part to all of this, in that a lot of people have picked up on the weird stares that Isaac Hampstead Wright was giving everybody during the season, and he said that some of them were because he didn't have his contacts in, so he couldn't really see what he was looking at. And like the other actors would come up to him and say like, "Why are you giving me like this death stare?" He's like, "I don't know what I was looking at." So, like, some of his reactions to people, we have to sort of put like the brakes on a little bit. It may be something that was unintentional, but maybe they left in for some reason.
Yeah, but so I agree with that. But what he's staring at, I think, is important.
Yeah,
so the other thing that I picked up on in that Bran video that I just released is that if you go back and have a look at that scene where Littlefinger gives him that dagger, he's looking at it for over a minute. It's clearly obvious that this is important. Whatever Littlefinger's saying is neither here nor there to him. What is important is this dagger. So what he's staring at is important. Marcus Pinder saying, will Bran become the Night King? Personally, I think no. I don't think that that's where this story is going. Matt, perhaps you can come on that in just a moment and answer that together with Richard Seymour, who says, any chance they will fix the broken seasons on the show or in the book?
Sure. So the first one, I covered this in my Is the Night King Dead video. The part that I focused on most of it was that weird mark that's on Bran's arm that the Night King left there, and just the uniqueness of it, that he put it on Bran's sort of dream form, and it ended up on his real skin, which means that, and he was using it to track him. So it's something deeply magical and unique. So if you're looking for something deeply magical and unique for how the Night King may have survived, then that's definitely, as like I was talking about earlier with Kim Renfro's article, that is a piece they have on the board they could use. I don't know if they will. They probably won't. But the fact that there is some sort of weird connection between Bran and Night King, similar to like Bran and Summer, is certainly strange. So that could be a thing that comes up. What What was the second part? I'm sorry.
The second part was Bran and the Night King.
Oh, what was the first part then? I think I got
sorry,
that
that's the Broken Seasons.
one. Oh, Broken Seasons. Yeah, it sort of depends if he's really gone or not, because George has hinted that the seasons being weird is magical. That has something to do with the balance of ice and fire, probably something to do with the others and the Valyrians and the dragons, etc., etc. So, like, throughout history, there have been points of what they called long summer versus the long night. Like, the long summer is obviously less destructive, but it would be like 30 years of summer straight. And if the dragons are still around, then maybe they won't go back to being balanced. Maybe they'll just go back to being summer all the time, which would still not be super great. I don't know. It really depends if you think that the Night King is truly gone and if it was his presence that made the winters so strange, I guess.
Yeah, I think where I would go with that is that I think that there's a good chance that the show will say, leave it with this hint that yes, these threats might have been dealt with for now, but they've not gone forever. So I think there will be a hint that the Night King, if not him personally, but the others might still be there. Maybe a glimpse at whatever they were doing up in the lands of always winter and all the rest of it. Maybe a hint of some dragon eggs somewhere, that kind of thing. So I think that magic is not going to be completely decimated. So magic is still going to be in the world. It might be dampened down a little bit, but magic is still going to be in the world. And as it's a magical world, I suspect this might mean that the seasons, although we almost certainly won't find out because the show won't carry on for several decades afterwards, but the seasons won't be fully sorted out. Lycan645 says Bran as Hand, 1,000 eyes and 1 wheelchair. Yep, so this is a reference to Blood Raven was 1,000 eyes and 1. Ashley Bolger says, do you think Littlefinger is still alive? Varys once said he is the most dangerous man in Westeros. Personally, I think that he's dead. I think that they got rid of him. I know that there was a much shared video setting out how perhaps he could have realized that the end was coming and paid somebody to take his place and all the rest of it. I think that's just it's too much for this. I think that they've the story is being simplified down so much. They've got rid of Littlefinger and he is gone. But Matt, are you going to tell me you believe that he is still alive?
Oh, Robert, he's totally no. I'm kidding. I mean, if they did, it'd be the most complicated reveal ever for a minor character that they already tied up his arc anyway. Like, the fact that the noose finally came around his neck from his own apprentice is like the perfect ending for a character like that. It'd be kind of silly to bring him back to do, I don't even know what would he do? Just like stroke his goatee again?
Yeah, exactly. Haha, I'm back. Yeah, I mean, exactly. There's no plot imperative for him to return other than just showing that he's clever. And he's not a major character. He's sort of a middling character. So I think, yeah, I would agree. I can't see why they would bring him back. Mazun Chendi SO says Bran's gonna walk into Sir Pounce and kill all. I like it. I think Sir Pounce is officially dead now, though. Sadly,
Sir Pounce is. The show's terrible. I'm done with it. No Sir Pounce.
Well, I'm sorry, guys, to break it to you. I think that's what the official line is, that Sir Pounce is now gone. Wise Guy says Arya has been a terrible character in the last few seasons. Total psychopath and queen of cringe. R.I.P. Littlefinger and the Night King. Such a shame. I quite like that. I probably disagree with this one. I personally liked Arya. Yes, she became a psychopath. I think there's no doubt that she was enjoying the murders and all the rest of it. But I think that I quite like the fact that they made her into this astonishing assassin. It worked really well for me as a sort of an overall character arc. Romy Zavira Vendercult says 2 men with beautiful voices. Thank you. Thank you both. Blue Moon Studios says became a patron during last weekend's live stream. Just wanted to say another thank you for your insightful content. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And then 2 super chats from Ike Orgu, apologies for mispronouncing your name, saying, this stupid show written by Dumb and Dumber, where the big villain is a middle-aged widow with pirate and a single zombie, is finished. And considering how incompetent the idiot writers are, the last twist to subvert your expectations will be that it was all a dream. Jon will wake up on the wall like a weird dream. Run credits. Respect your view, but I personally disagree. I think that this is still a fantastic show, which is why we're all talking about it a few hours before it airs. But did you want to pick up on Arya, the character of Arya? Did you like what they've done with her arc?
Yes, there were some parts of it. I mean, obviously, there's nothing everybody loves all the time. The parts I didn't like of Arya's were kind of the weird chase sequence throughout Bravos, that whole thing where she was fighting the waif. That didn't do so well for me. But since then, since she came back to Westeros, I've been very happy with what she's been doing. The destruction of House Frey was one of those just like jaw-dropping things. The way she's been subtly coming back to humanity and reestablishing herself as Arya instead of no one has been a really nice slow burn leading up to obviously the Gendry love scene, where it was like, oh yeah, she's finally back to being herself, but that she hasn't forgotten where she's come from, and she's still suspicious of people, and she's like this crazy effective warrior, and she finds her ways to be in the right place at the right time. And that, I don't know, that I don't really see the cringe factor behind her. It seems like she's a well-developed character who they're using in a very good way, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. One other thing about Arya, the MLB show, Small Business Podcast, says, talking of debts, do you think Arya has a debt to pay still to the many-faced god? And if so, could that be our bittersweet ending for her arc? I think this is tying in with is Jaqen coming back for her. Do you think that she has a debt to pay in some way?
Well, the debts were that Arya saved 3 people from dying who should have, and therefore she owed 3 names to the god of death. I guess that was how it worked with Jaqen. So I'm not really sure. Like, I guess it kind of depends if you think like the god of death that the Faceless Men serve is somehow like linked to the Night King or the others in some way, because they have similar functions of bringing death to everybody eventually. I guess by killing the Night King, she saved a lot of people from dying. So I guess if you wanted to word it that way, but it feels kind of like fitting people to be Azor Ahai, where like finding reasons rather than something that's kind of obvious, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that for me, the kind of slightly enigmatic smile that Jaqen gave her when she left was actually his way of setting her free to go and do what she was doing. I think they've trained her up, and they're happy for her to go out and do what she has been doing. So, as I say, my take, certainly in the books, that I don't think they've taken it across really to the show, is that they're very happy for her to be going off and killing Cersei and the Mountain, and they would be delighted with her killing the Night King. So I think actually she is, whether she thinks that she's doing the many-faced god's will or not, I think that she is doing what they're wanting. So I think that they don't need to come back and reclaim her. They're very happy with her doing what she is doing right now. Arlene Jasmine says, I forgot my question, but we'll probably remember it halfway through the episode. Great live stream, guys. Thank you so much. And we've got another question about whether somebody's really dead. Life of Day says, whether Brienne killed him or not, my gut instinct tells me it's significant we never saw Stannis Baratheon's body and saw the death blow from his perspective as opposed to an omniscient action shot. Do you think Stannis might return?
Oh, wouldn't that be something if this is how he finally... Your mods again wanted to remind everybody, stop being spoiling stuff, getting banned for doing it. This was something we talked about in our last live stream, where I was like, oh man, all these other characters are going to show up. We're going to see Hodor, we're going to see Bloodraven, we're going to see Lady and like stuff like that, and none of it really happened. We saw some of the Stark dead from the crypts, Maybe somebody that looked kind of like Maester Lewin, people were saying. I don't think he'd be buried down there anyway, but like there wasn't like a Lyanna coming back from the dead or a Ned coming back from the dead. So I imagine we're probably not going to see that. If Stannis became a white, then he was just part of the army, I guess, which I guess would be kind of like the ultimate humbling experience for the guy who thought he was Azor Ahai.
Yeah, agreed. I don't think we're going to see him back in the show. He's in the books. He's clearly alive and has a part to play on the show. No, I think his time has passed. Melisandre's gone as well. Davos is supporting someone else. That there's no place for him now anymore. So yeah, and I think that Brienne. I see no earthly reason why Brienne wouldn't have killed him for what he did to Renly, who she was effectively in love with. So yeah, it makes no sense to me that he would come back. Tanya Yoganathan has a couple of super chats here. Thank you very much. Saying Cersei is someone who tortured her and her family. This is okay. So actually, no. This is the second one first. So she's probably going to stay in the north. But thoughts of Sansa killing Cersei? She killed Ramsay, arranged Littlefinger's execution, and says multiple times that she wishes she was the one who killed Joffrey. Cersei is someone who tortured her and her family. It would be a nice twist because everyone is thinking that Tyrion or Dany or Jon or whoever is going to do it. Maybe like Arya, they're showing Sansa without showing Sansa. I think this is a fantastic idea that clearly Sansa has got history with Cersei, and Sansa is very much wanting to be playing the game now, the Game of Thrones, and thinks that she is at least the match of Cersei, I would have thought. Do I think that she's going to personally, literally kill her? I suspect not. But whether she would try and manipulate events to get Cersei killed, then yes, I think that's definitely part of where she may be coming from. But what do you reckon, Matt? What role do you think Sansa might be playing in Cersei's death, assuming Cersei dies?
Well, assuming she dies. I mean, crossing all my fingers at the moment. Please, Cersei, that would be great. Yeah, you're right. She has in the past engineered the downfall of characters in the way that they never really saw coming, and sort of was not the person that would personally like swing the sword per se. Although I guess she kind of did with Ramsay, but that was more the dogs, where she like setting up people and knocking over the dominoes. So that would be a very satisfying way for Cersei to go out, especially because maybe there's something in the fact that Tyrion and Sansa are reconnecting as people, and they both know Cersei really well. They know she's going to try and screw them over. Maybe those two characters are being set up as the ones that will figure out Cersei's strategy and undermine it in a similar way that, like you said, Sansa did to Ramsay Bolton rallying the Vale Knights at the last second.
Yeah, so I think that this is where I'm at with this. I think that she is very capable of it. I don't think necessarily that she's going to do it herself. But another angle of this from Linda Procedure, thank you, another very generous super chat. Is it possible that Sansa manipulates Tyrion to betray Dany to benefit the North? Sort of referencing the talk between Dany and Sansa about manipulation, and the talk between Cersei and Sansa about using the greatest weapon, her sexuality. Do you think that, so Sansa and Tyrion clearly had a moment down there in the crypts. Do you think that she is now going to try and manipulate Tyrion, try and get him on her side?
No, if that happens, I think that'll be Bran's role, that he seems to have some reason for setting apart the Starks and Dany. I don't think that will be Sansa doing that in particular. Like maybe she'll be a part of Bran's whatever thing he's doing to try and make sure Jon and Dany have their conflict between them. But I don't think she will be like the genesis of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's going to be a lot of factors. So I think that Sansa is clearly going to be trying to get independence for the North.
Right.
I think that the fact that Miss Missandei was there as well, and basically Sansa was saying the only reason why a marriage between us couldn't work is because you've got divided loyalties. ties up the idea that what if he didn't have divided loyalties? So I think that they were sort of setting this up as a possibility that Tyrion might shift sides. So, I mean, we've seen it so many different ways. There definitely is something going on with some shifting sides between all the people who are supporting Dany at the moment, perhaps not doing so in the longer term. So I think that's possible. I don't think that this is going to be Sansa manipulating Tyrion. I think that scene in the crypts was just them being very honest with themselves because they thought they might well die in the next few hours.
And sure, and like we talked about earlier, the fact that Bran and Tyrion had that conversation, can't forget how important that is for Tyrion going forward, that Bran has been in his ear.
Well, Mod Mary just saying, if Sansa and Tyrion remarry and live a long and happy life, whose mouth will be around his cock when he's 80 years old? I'll leave that one there, guys. You can decide that one for yourself. But thank you very much, Mod Mary, for the super chat. Mary D says, Robert, just want to say that you're the best. Thank you, and really enjoy all of your content. And Jolly Hotchmuth says, perfect ending would be a King Arthur type situation. All the young leaders are tired of houses against houses and power struggles. Everyone united. So yeah, I like the idea of the houses and this whole situation of like the absolute monarchy ending and people recognizing that the Game of Thrones has caused huge amounts of death and disruption and pain. I love the idea of everyone coming together at the end and trying to figure out where they're going to go in the future. As I say, I have this feeling they're going to cut it off before giving us the full geopolitical outlook going forward. But yes, this coming together afterwards works for me. Where do you stand on this in terms of what the situation might look like at the end going forwards in terms of how to the houses and how to govern Westeros?
Well, first, the chat is noticing that you're blushing, Robert, after answering that super chat.
Am I?
Oh, went right to your head. It's just he's not prepared for that kind of language.
Please, guys, spare me.
Or send more. So how will go in the end? I tend to think that what we saw from Lord Glover may be the kind of thing that is representative of what we're going to see in the future. Like, Glover knew that the White Walkers were marching on the north, that he was screwed on his own, and still he marched home and left out humanity to die in the end. So I tend to think that there will be a lot of strong will behind this idea of like uniting and finding a way to put aside these petty differences, but they never go away. Like, people don't stop being people, unfortunately. You know, the wheel keeps turning no matter how much Dany wants to break it. The only way you break it is like the Night King's way, which is by ending all life.
Yeah. Or I think some kind of systemic change is needed. And I think that the way that they might show them, as we talked about many times before, is by the destruction of the Iron Throne, symbolically ending the era of absolute monarchy. So I think that is entirely possible. And I think that we will see who the survivors are. And I think that we'll be broadly happy that they will figure out a better way going forward, because it will be people like Sam and Gilly, probably someone like Davos, that kind of thing, people that we actually trust, who will be left with to deal with all of this. Jeremy saying, Robert, I discovered you in January of this year. You have great content. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much. And Mod's great work as well. I agree. Do you think the Golden Company will help Dany or Jon? Personally, I think the Golden Company, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think that they are just going to be treated as any old sellsword company. I think that they are going to be fighting for Cersei because Cersei paid them. And I think that's where it's going to be. I don't see, and I might be entirely in the wrong here, but I can't see any reason why they've not set up any reason why they might turn on Cersei and actually fight for one of the others, because they've not given the history of the Golden Company, and I think they would need to give us that in order for us to understand why they were doing it. They can't just like suddenly turn around and change sides for no reason. There has to be a reason for them to do it. But what do you think? Do you think they will? I know JR on Geek Chat 1 has his order or Golden 66 is his theory about them possibly changing sides. What do you think?
He was also hyping up the fiery hand. He really likes this idea of like surprise armies coming out of nowhere.
Everyone loves surprise armies.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I think that will change their minds is Drogon like just showing up, and if they meet them in a field, like in an actual battle. Sellswords in the books in the show have pretty much shown to pretty much be cowards when they have to be, and they're willing to be bought off to save themselves. Now, the Golden Company has never given up a contract, so that seems to be like a hindrance to that. Like, well, how could they do that? They've never done it before. Well, how many times have they faced dragons? Big zero on that one. Never faced an actual dragon. And that made Jaime basically want to turn and run and give up the kingdom to Dany. So if there's any kind of situation like that, I imagine the Golden Company's not going to be as happy about Cersei's kingdom as they are about their lives. That's sort of the point of being a sellsword.
Yeah, and they don't have their elephants, of course, and perhaps the elephants were their saving grace when fighting dragons. Who knows? Margot, thank you so much for your super chat. Donald Peoples, thank you, saying just popping in, we'll watch later. I've been saying all week prophecy will bite your prick off. Are you just trying to put in word, make me say rude words, guys?
You're turning red.
We fell for it and put too much stock in all of it. We are Melisandre. Yeah, I think that's an entirely valid point. Brian Price asking a question with no rude words in. So thank you. How is Dany going to rebuild her army? Will she recruit to the remnants of other houses? Surely 2 dragons isn't enough. What with the large crossbow catapults? What do you reckon about this? Is she gonna rebuild her army? 2 dragons is clearly very important, but is she gonna try and rebuild an army, and if so, where from?
Yeah, that's kind of the question. Like, what armies are even out there at this moment? Like I think the only untouched armies are the High Towers, but I tend to think that Euron's going to sack Old Town and probably remove them from being available to Dany. Probably if there's no High Towers, there's nobody to command them. What armies are still out there? They've pretty much all been ravaged except for the Crannog men. Howland Reed and his boys are still out there. Nobody's really done anything to them. They're pretty much untouched in this war. So that would be the best source that they could probably get. Maybe the Mountain Clans, although they gave them the Stannis in the books. I don't know if they've actually showed up like Morgan Little, Big Bucket Wool. Like those are always guys that could show up. Probably not, just because there's not enough time. But like if you're talking about what demographics still have any sort of army, like maybe the Mountain Clans.
Yeah, I mean, I could certainly see her trying to see whether, for example, the Dornish army, then I think that they were still waiting, somewhere in Sunspear waiting, so it's possible she might try and get them, but we've not got any Dornish characters anymore, so they normally need a person that they might be sort of in contact with so that for us to be able to understand who the leader is, but they killed off all of the Dornish, so there's a few armies dotted about, but I think it is just now a matter of her dragons, and that is her route to try and win this, is that she's just going to threaten people with her dragons, which is probably the way she should have started from a purely pragmatic perspective, where she should have started at the very beginning. Tyrion's clever ideas weren't as effective as the initial Targaryen invasion, which was bringing in bringing in dragons and just frying people. Jeff Burst, I saw your comment in the chat. Yeah, I think I forgot to put the link to Matt's channel down in the description. I will do that after this live stream finishes. But literally, if you just go and Google Joe Magician, you will find it. In fact, you'll probably find all the gazillion places that he is on the internet. So I only get people on here that I would personally recommend. And Matt is excellent and produces some fantastic videos, so please go and do that. John Scott says, how about this twist? No one gets the Iron Throne. Cersei, Jon, and Dany die. Gendry or Arya get the south, while Sansa and Tyrion take the north. Yeah, so I think the idea that no one gets the Iron Throne is very appealing. I think that it is this symbol, it's the equivalent of the One Ring in Lord of the Rings, this symbol of power that everybody's striving for, and it brings lots of conflict and death and destruction. So I think there's a good chance that it may go. I think that Dany has to say she has to die. Uh, Dany's character arc either ends with her sitting on the throne or being dead at the moment, because we've not seen any hint that she might give it up. So that's certainly there. I think Jon won't want to sit on the throne, and I think that Cersei, there's no chance that she survives this. So I think there's a very good chance that none of those three will be sitting on the Iron Throne at the end of it. But what do you think about this second part of it, Matt? This idea of Gendry and Arya ruling the south while Sansa and Tyrion ruling the north?
Yeah, it's something I've written about before for Watchers, and it's been an idea in the fandom long before that. That, like we were talking about, that Arya makes this Lyanna-like change from being this sort of badass warrior person to sort of finding a true love in her mind and making that part of her thing. But I don't think Arya would ever really want to live as the lady of anything. Like, if we take Lyanna as the example, when she was offered the chance to be the Lady of Storm's End, she said, "No, why would I want to do that? My family's in the north. Storm's End is cold and rainy and dreary, and no, I don't that's." And she even did that thing where she said to Ned and then to Nymeria, like, "That's not me." It's like, being a lady will never be her. Probably it doesn't mean her and Gendry could never be a thing, but it's I think it's unlikely for her to even want to take that up.
Yeah, not
Some,
as a ruler.
that's definitely something she's been going for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. I think I agree with that. So she's not a character who's wanting to rule, to be the person who sort of sits there while other people do stuff. She's wanting to be involved in the action of what's actually happening. So I think that is where I see her arc going. But yeah, Gendry could well be legitimized. I could certainly see that happen. But as long as that he doesn't think that means that he gets to be the king, I think that they could quite happily make him head of House Baratheon, but say, but you're not the king. Um, We've got Matthew Bacon, who says, "Wine at the ready. Enjoy the episode, everyone." Yeah, I have, as you all know, I have my glass of wine ready for me for whenever I finish doing the live stream. So cheers. Donna Daly says, "I'm hoping this is crazy and you can talk me down from it." Well, here we go. Jon and Dany take the throne. Yeah. Jon and Dany have a baby. Yeah. The baby has the Targ curse and is totally insane. I will throw to Matt in a moment, but my take on the baby is, as I think I said, we're starting to run out of time. We're now 3 episodes into the final season. If this baby is going to appear, then Dany will have to be pregnant, obviously pregnant, at some point in the next episode or two. We saw no hint of it so far. Not even a sort of mention of it. They played up last season a lot. They played up this idea about Dany, whether she could have children, which led everybody to think that she was going to have a child. So far, we've not seen a hint of that yet. They have to bring it in very soon if it's going to happen. And I don't think we're going to see the baby grow up. So I don't think that the last bit of what you're saying about what this new baby would be like when they grow up, I don't think we'll get that far at all. I think that the action is going to end, the season is going to end shortly after everything has been resolved. They're not going to do that 20 years later, Harry Potter kind of thing. This is the final chapter. Let's tell you what's happened in the meantime. That's not what's going to happen. But Matt, what's your take then? Are they going to have a baby? Are they going to sit on the throne? And is the baby going to have the Targ curse?
Well, I certainly thought she was going to be pregnant already. I wasn't quite sure on the time skips in between, because they had to go all the way back to Dragonstone, load up everybody, get them back to the north. I was like, what is that, like 3-4 months? Is that point when one starts showing? No, it takes a little longer. So I don't know. I guess it depends if there's any time skips too. Like, are there going to be obviously like months in between like one of these episodes? If they do, that could happen. I very much doubt we'll see any like this child, if it exists, grown up in any way. I don't think we're going to get like that Lord of the Rings thing where Arwen sees her son grown up in like the future kind of thing. I doubt we would get something like that because honestly, that was pretty cheesy when we saw it. It looked kind of ridiculous. But I think we may get like a redo of like the Tower of Joy, not in the sense that Dany dies, but the focusing on the newborn baby with its eyes opening, and maybe we'll give it like purple eyes or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's possible. Guys, we're starting to come to the end of the stream. I reckon we've got probably 5 or 10 more minutes to go. So if you have got any final questions, now's the time to drop them into the chat. Just want to pick up on Romy Zaveria Venderkult saying the first teaser trailer showed us the map of Westeros frosted way further south than Winterfell, clashing with fire around Riverrun. Do you think there's still going to be a meaning in that? I think what I would say to all of the talk about the teaser trailers, these are not meant to be taken literally in any way. So if you remember the teaser trailers we got one of them where it was Winterfell, everything was snowed over, and we just had what looked like the remains of like Bran's wheelchair, and there was like Jon's sword and various other things like that, implying that what if the Army of the Dead won. There was another teaser trailer where you had Jon, Sansa, and Arya down in the crypts, just turning and facing someone coming towards them. That didn't happen exactly like that. So I think we should take all of those teasers with a pinch of salt. They are there simply to create some hype, to get us excited about the season coming forward. So don't take any of those literally. That's not what they were there for. They were there to just get us excited.
Which they did. People started talking about the God's Eye and the Trident and the battle over the God's Eye and all that stuff. And it's like, none of that seems to be happening.
Yeah.
It was just people like us make videos about them, so people will get interested.
Oh yeah, and yeah, I'm not gonna complain about it. It's great fun making videos about it and all the rest of it. Matt, just as we've got just a few more minutes to go, do you want to let people remind people where they can find you on the internet?
Is my thing on mute? Yes, it is. Okay, sure. You guys can find me on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/JoeMagician. After the episode tonight, directly afterwards, so 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On my channel, I'll be going live for an hour-long reaction and question and answer thing with my Maester Monthly co-host, Bookshelf Stud. Going to drop the link there in the chat. We'll be talking about the episode, what we thought of it. And then I also put out some recent videos. Like I was talking about during the stream, is the Night King really dead? I imagine we'll find out pretty quick if he's dead or not. I think he is, but you never know. And the video on Jenny Song and Killing of a Ranger Part 2 are out there, which are pretty good.
If you say so yourself.
I do say so myself. Holly Drogon says, loving your Serenity Valley poster, very shiny. Yeah, that's way over there. I'm a big fan of Firefly and Serenity, so I have a poster of it up. You can also find me, like I said, on the Maester Monthly podcast, where myself and the other Song of Ice and Fire mods react to the best post from Reddit during that time period. So we're doing one weekly for the season. And on Watchers on the Wall, where I'm a feature writer. I'll be putting up an article probably this week, and we're doing a thing called the Fandom Road, which is where each of the members of the Watchers staff, we write how we got into the fandom, what is meant to us, that kind of stuff. So you can look forward to that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Mike D, thank you for the super chat saying most intelligent reviews of Game of Thrones on YouTube. Many thanks. Thank you. Guys, in terms of after the episode, Matt has already told you about his post show stream. I also try and point people to various other places around the world. If you're a fan of my friend Kyle, Azora Hype, he's going to be on his channel after the show with Gemma from Secrets of the Citadel and JR from Geek Chat 1. So please do go and check them out. we did have one other super chat just coming in. Sir Brendan Shivers the Cool says, just wanted to take this occasion to yet again say you make my favorite content, and congrats on cracking 100,000 subs. Well done, sir. Thank you. Yeah, for those who missed it, I reached 100,000 subscribers this week, which I'm absolutely blown away by. And I just want to say a huge thanks to everyone who's helped in that. Today, particular thanks to the moderators. You've done an amazing job. I always thank my patrons. If you are at all interested in supporting the channel or getting access to some exclusive things I do for my patrons, I give my patrons a chance to vote on which videos I should be doing, early access to stuff that I do, and I do some exclusive audio narrations for them as well. Please check out my Patreon page. There's a link down in the description, and probably going to be one in the chat room as well. Guys, if you're at all interested in my other Season 8 videos, then in a moment, then there will be a link appearing up here. Link to my Patreon is going to be appearing up here if you're watching later. Guys, thank you so much. Matt, thank you. Thank you in the chat, and I shall see you again soon. Take care.
Goodbye, everybody.